So that's groovy. I've got messages stored in state on one of our components. We pass it down as a prop to one of the other components. But now we want the form to be able to actually add to it. And what did we say about props? They're read-only, right? I can't change a prop. But the only way for that array to get down into the form would be as a prop, right? So what can I do? What kinds of things can you pass as a prop? Strings? Sure. Numbers? Sure. Objects? Yeah. Arrays? Functions? Could we pass a function as a prop? Why the heck not? So the only component that can actually change that messages array is chat, right? Because that's where it's actually in state. So any function we write that modifies that list of messages is going to have to live on the chat component. It's the only one that's allowed to change it because it's the one that has it in state. So let's just make a method here that does that thing. So how about add message? Clever name. What's it going to do? It's going to add something to that array. We know we can't just say this.state.messages.push, unfortunately. So what can we do? What did we do last time? What did we do in React Robots? We started with a copy of that array, right? So we'll say const messages equals a copy of this.state.messages. Use that fancy new spread operator we like so much. Breaks an array out into its individual items. Surround that with an array literal, and lo and behold, you have a copy of the array. So then I can push a new one on there. Don't worry about where it comes from now. For now, we'll just hard code one in there. So messages.push, and we'll just make a message that looks like those others. So ID 3, or so that they have unique ID still. How about, let's see, is it date.now? I think that works. Username, whoever. Ferris. Why not? Buddy. Pick me, pick me. Cool. So now I've pushed it onto this array, but I need to update state, right? The only way to update state is this.setState. What's the property and state that I want to change? Messages. And what do I want to set it to? This array, messages. And as we learned yesterday, that means we can use the shorthand, right? And just say messages inside curly braces. So never mind being able to run that from the form. Let's just see if that works. How can we test that from the console? We totally can. This is super cool. Don't miss this. In your React Dev Tools, find the component you want to deal with. So I'm going to search for chat. Here it is. Select it. It shows you your props. It shows you your state. And notice what it says up here. $R. So just like we could use $0 from the Elements tab, we can use $R here to access our current component from the console. $R. There we go. Chat. So how about I say $R dot add message. There it is. Now we don't grab the container div from the page, build a new div, and insert the div as a child or anything, right? All we do is update state, and the new div just shows up on the page automatically. We no longer manage the UI ourselves. We just set up the basics, and then we manage our state, and the UI just happens. Run add message again. Pick me, pick me, pick me, pick me. Totally works. Back in our React Dev tools, if you look at state, messages, now we have seven things in the array. Pretty nice, pretty nice. So to do this from the form, how do we do that? We have a function that does the thing. How can we...
So the function takes in something, and then I don't know if we can call the function from that component.
So we want to call that function from the component, so let's figure out how we do that. Not even worrying about how to get the data out of the form. Let's just have it called this function as it is with the hard-coded message in there. What can we do? What did I say before we started doing this? The only way to get anything from the outside into a component is through props, right? So we need something to get passed down as a prop. And we want to be able to call this function from inside that component. So what should we pass in as a prop?
Add message.
Yeah, the function. Add message. Here's our component message form. Let's add a prop called add message. And what should its value be? Like you mean it. That doesn't sound like you mean it. Emily can't hear you. Yeah, say it again. This dot add message. Darn tootin'. This dot add message. Sweet.
Are we going to have to do that weird like find thing? Or?
We're going to have to do something.
Okay.
Let's figure out what we can do. So inside message form, we're now receiving a prop. So I'll put my props in there. So I want something to happen when I submit the form. How do you suppose we do that? We had an on-click before, right? We can totally do an on-submit. So let's go ahead and add an on-submit prop here. And on-submit is going to be equal to what? Props dot add message. So right now we're kind of expecting it to run the thing, but we're expecting it to blow up because this won't be set right. So let's try. Doesn't matter what we type in here. Let's hit enter. It actually refreshed the dang page. It's still submitted. So we still have to prevent default. So how about a message form? The message form is just a function. We can totally write other functions inside functions. So how about I say const handle submit equals an arrow function. It'll receive an event. It'll do event.prevent default. And it will call props.add message. And then I can change my onSubmit to just handle submit. Not this dot handle submit. This isn't a class. Handle submit is really just a local variable inside this function. Now, if add message were defined inside message form, this would take care of the binding issue because we are using an arrow function now. But that's not where add message was defined, so it's probably not going to be the right thing. Let's refresh. Let's try submitting again. And I get cannot read property messages of undefined on the very first line of add message. Cannot read property messages of undefined. So what is it saying is undefined? And that red line there, it says cannot read property messages of undefined. So what am I trying to read messages as a property of? on that line. This dot state, right? So this dot state's undefined because this is not our component. One way we know we could get around this. We're in chat now. We could say this dot add message bind this, but ugh. I promised you there was a third way. And it's the easiest way. It's a fairly new way. It is not yet a final part of the ECMAScript standard, but it is supported in Babel, which is good enough for us because Babel is going to turn it into browser-compatible JavaScript for us. It's called property assignment. And what it allows you to do is set properties of a class by just putting an equal sign out here in the middle of nowhere, outside of a method. So I could take advantage of that to do things like state equals. Yeah, I could do that. So actually with property assignment, you can do it outside of the constructor. Not going to do that right this second because that's not the point. What it also lets you do is say add message equals arrow function. And it actually creates it as a method, but with the binding permanently attached to it so that this will be the right thing. So if we just always define our methods this way with an arrow function, we never have to worry about this again. So let's try this again. Type anything, submit, and there, I have my new message.
Did we call handle submit anywhere?
Yes. So in message form, the onSubmit on the form is now handle submit. Not this dot handle submit. It's not a method. It's really just a local variable inside this function here. Now, worth pointing out that this event that gets passed into handle submit is not really a raw DOM event. We're in React's world now. We play by React's rules. React is going to pass us this object that wraps a real DOM event. And luckily, it has most of the same properties, so we can still totally just call prevent default, and it'll have the same effect. But it's not really the actual event object it's passing us. It's like a React event object. So just wanted to point that out, even though in practice, it doesn't make much difference to us right now. So add a hard-coded message when the form is submitted.